Chapter 4, Lesson 2, The Colonial Government.
Lesson 2, Colonial Government. It matters because, using ideas from England and their own experiences, American colonists began developing their beliefs about the proper form and role of government. English principles of government. Guiding question. Why are protected rights and representative government important principles? When English colonists came to North America, they brought with them English ideas about government. These ideas had been developing in England over hundreds of years. By the 1600s, the English people had won political liberties such as trial by jury that were largely unknown elsewhere. At the heart of the English system were two principles of government: protected rights and representative legislatures. These two principles greatly influenced the development of the United States and are important parts of the U.S. Constitution. Protected rights. The colonists believed that government must respect civil liberties, or rights. In fact, the protection of people's rights was a central idea in the English system of government. It first appeared in the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, which King John signed on June 15, 1215. This document gave English people protection against unjust treatment or punishment. For the English, even kings and queens were bound by the law. Representative government. The English had a tradition of representative government in which people elect delegates to make laws and conduct government. The English Parliament was a representative assembly. It had the power to legislate or make laws. Parliament had two chambers, or houses, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Only the eldest sons of England's aristocracy, the upper ruling class, could sit in the House of Lords. The House of Commons included commoners, mostly merchants or property owners elected by other property owners. American legislatures grew in part from this English model. In the mid-1600s, Parliament and King James II began a struggle for power. In 1688, Parliament removed King James II from power and crowned William and Mary to rule. William and Mary promised to govern England according to the statutes, laws in Parliament agreed upon, and the laws and customs of the same. The English called this peaceful transfer of power the Glorious Revolution. It brought a major change in the idea of government in England. From that time forward, no ruler would have more power than the legislature. The English Bill of Rights. To set clear limits on a ruler's powers, Parliament drew up the English Bill of Rights in 1689. The Bill of Rights stated that the ruler could not suspend Parliament's laws, impose taxes, or raise an army without Parliament's consent. Members of Parliament had to be freely elected. Citizens of England had the right to a fair trial by jury in court cases. The Bill of Rights also banned cruel and unusual punishments. Government in America. The 13 colonies began as either charter or proprietary colonies. Charter colonies were based on a charter, a grant of rights by the English monarch to a company. Massachusetts was a charter colony. Proprietary colonies were the property of an owner or group of owners. These proprietors ruled more or less as they wished. For example, they named their own governors and many other colonial officials. Pennsylvania was a proprietary colony. Some colonies later became royal colonies under direct English control. Virginia became the first royal colony in 1624. In a royal colony, Parliament appointed a governor and council known as the Upper House. The colonists selected an assembly, or lower house. The governor and council usually did as the English king and Parliament told them. This often led to conflicts with the assembly. For example, colonists got angry when officials enforced tax or trade laws. Not all colonists had a voice in government. In general, only white men who owned property could vote. Most women, indentured servants, landless poor, and African Americans could not vote. Still, compared to Europe, the share of the colonial population taking part in government was large. This training proved valuable when the colonies became independent. Local government in the colonies. Over time, townspeople began discussing local issues at town meetings. These developed into local governments, with landowners holding the right to vote and pass laws. Because colonists in many areas took part in local government, they developed a strong belief in their right to govern themselves. Town meetings helped set the stage for the American Revolution. Progress check. Making connections. How did the Magna Carta influence government in the colonies? English economic policies. Guiding question. How did the colonists react to England's economic policies? Beginning in the 1600s, many European nations followed a theory known as mercantilism. Mercantilism holds that a country builds wealth and power by building its supplies of gold and silver. To achieve this goal, a country must export or sell to other countries more than it imports or buys from other countries. A country must also seek colonies, which could supply raw materials and serve as a market for exports. The English followed a mercantilist policy. They looked to the American colonies for raw materials such as tobacco, rice, indigo, wheat, lumber, fur, leather, fish, and whale products. They also wanted the colonists to buy English manufactured goods, such as tools, clothing, and furniture. To control this trade, England began passing a series of laws called Navigation Acts in the 1650s. The laws forced colonists to sell their raw materials to England even if they could get a better price elsewhere. Goods bought by the colonies from other countries in Europe had to go to England first and be taxed. All trade goods had to be carried on ships built in England or the colonies. The crews on the ships had to be English as well. Colonial resistance. The colonists at first accepted the Navigation Acts because the laws guaranteed them a place to sell their raw materials. Later, the colonists came to resent English restrictions. With their population growing, colonists wanted to manufacture their own goods rather than import them from England. They also wanted to sell their products to buyers other than England. Colonial merchants began smuggling or shipping goods without government permission or payment of taxes. Controls on trade would later cause conflict between the American colonies and England. Progress check. Making generalizations. What was the purpose of the Navigation Acts?
The purpose of the Navigation Acts was to make the colonists sell their raw materials to England even if they could get a better price elsewhere. Because all goods had to go to England first to be taxed. And all trade goods had to be carried on ships built in England or the colonies. And the crews on the ships had to be English as well. So basically what the English were trying to do was kind of create a monopoly between the colonies and themselves where they got all of the profits.